Okay, everyone ready to go? How's lunch? At the appropriate time, certainly after the governor's speech, there is something called a sustainability station that'll take your garbage and your plastic and do the right thing with it. So, it's my great pleasure to introduce the Governor of Oregon, John Kitzhaber. Last year at this summit, our newly elected governor declared that the time has come to break decisively with the past. Did he ever mean it? At the summit, he's embraced our goal of creating 25,000 more jobs per year and raising our incomes in every corner of the state. On his second day in office, he convened the Oregon Business Plan Steering Committee along with labor leaders and went to work on our top 10 jobs list. His regional development agenda and support for the Oregon Innovation Plan is unparalleled. He declared the need for bold proposals to change the way we budget for and deliver education and health care. 1 year later, the Oregon Education Investment Board and the Health Policy Board are well on their way towards implementation. The governor-elect didn't sugarcoat the challenges Oregon faced last year. But on a hopeful note, he declared that somewhere in America, a state needs to be able to demonstrate that we can weather this kind of challenge without losing our sense of community, without losing our commitment to one another, and emerge stronger and more united than where we began. Thanks to your leadership, Governor, that place is Oregon. Please welcome our Governor, John Kitzhaber.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. My God, Randy Miller stood up. Thank you very much for that warm welcome, Randy. When we met a year ago, we didn't pull any punches about the impact of this recession or the magnitude of the challenges facing our state as the cost of our public services continue to outpace revenue. We recognized together the need for transformational change, and we outlined a vision for a more sustainable future that included transforming outdated systems and institutions, and laying the foundation for job growth, for capital investment, and for economic prosperity to reach throughout our state to both urban and rural areas. But perhaps most importantly, we agreed to take on this challenge together. With the unprecedented collaboration between the public and private and philanthropic sectors, we recognize that our common interest as Oregonians at this particularly difficult point in our history far outweighed the differences that we might have. To that end, we vowed to establish 3 priorities from day one, and first was to ensure that the state is an effective partner in helping get the private sector economy moving again for both large companies and small entrepreneurs, and beginning to set the stage to break the boom-bust economic cycle that has plagued our state for decades. Second is to transform our system of health care to reduce the opportunity costs that come with spending an ever-growing portion of our resources on this one sector alone. And finally, transforming our system of public education to create a workforce that's capable to compete and excel in the global economy of the 21st century. 1 year later, and a little bit grayer, I believe we've made significant progress on all 3 of those areas. And while too many Oregonians are still out of work, facing uncertainty, I believe that we will emerge from this recession a stronger and better position for the future. So I'd like to take just a few minutes this noon and talk first about the progress we've made on the goals we set for ourselves a year ago. Second, how we can accelerate that progress. And finally, I'd like to make some suggestions on how the Oregon Business Plan can evolve with some elements I call a sustainable clean economy that can further help insulate us from the boom-bust cycles of the past. So first, with leadership from the legislature and citizens and communities throughout this state, we have taken a significant step towards changing our approach to health care. Passage this past session of Senate Bill 99 creates the Oregon Health Insurance Exchange, a health insurance marketplace where individuals and small businesses can shop for the best plan to meet their needs at the best price. And we've also passed House Bill 3650, which creates a pathway to fundamentally change the nature of our delivery system, starting with the 600,000 Oregonians on the Oregon Health Plan, and allowing us to take the first step towards reducing costs and improving health outcomes for all Oregonians. Our new business model will shift our focus from the emergency room and after-the-fact acute care interventions to prevention and early intervention and the community-based management of chronic conditions. The potential cost savings are significant. We have estimated over $200 million in this biennium, which will allow us to ensure that all of our vulnerable citizens remain covered while freeing up resources for other public priorities and creating a model for the private commercial health insurance market. In the 2 decades since Oregon has reformed its workers' compensation system, Oregon businesses have saved in the neighborhood of $14 billion. Can you imagine the competitive advantage those same businesses will have if we're able to reduce the cost of medical inflation in Oregon? And that is exactly the long-term objective of these reform efforts, to reduce the cost and to improve the health of all Oregonians. So we're going to need your help in this upcoming legislative session to make sure we get support and approval to allow this important healthcare transformation work to move forward to fruition. Second, with the help of the business community and very strong leadership from the legislator and from educators across the state of Oregon, we're also making progress on changing our system of public education in a way that will produce more resources for teachers and better outcomes for students. With only 2/3 of our high school graduates actually completing their degree, this is an issue of great urgency for each and every one of us. In fact, our social and our civic, and I would argue our economic objectives, depend on meeting some very, very aggressive benchmarks that by 2025, every student in Oregon will graduate with a high school degree. That means they can go on to post-secondary education without remediation, where 40% of those students get at least 2 years of post-secondary education or training, and another 40% get at least a baccalaureate degree or higher. With the passage of Senate Bill 909 and Senate Bill 242, we are for the very first time aligning funding and governance across the entire continuum of education, from early childhood to post-secondary education and training. And this approach includes a laser focus on early childhood, to make sure that every one of our children is ready to learn when they get to kindergarten, is ready to read at first grade, and is reading at level when they leave the 3rd grade. We're also seeking a waiver from the punitive aspects of the No Child Left Behind law in favor of tailored achievement compacts between the state and our educational institutions that spell out the outcomes we expect for the investment of state resources. And again, we are going to need a heavy lift and the support of everybody in this room in the next legislative session to make sure that we can continue to move this education reform through to its completion. Yet even as we pursue these important transformational changes in healthcare and in public education, we need to lean into the immediate challenge of creating jobs and positioning Oregon to be in a better place to compete in the economy of the 21st century, and to drive our per capita income back up above the national average in every part of this state, and to erase the troubling income disparities that have lasted far too long in our communities of color. On the jobs front, we are making progress. We've changed the tone at the top, and the collaborative partnership that we have built between labor, this organization, the Oregon Business Association, AOI, the other business organizations and chambers of commerce throughout the state of Oregon have been the key to the early successes we've had over these past 12 months. Lost in the headlines over the debt crisis in Europe and the failure of the Super Committee is the fact that we are, in fact, creating jobs here in Oregon. Since I took office, we've created over 18,000 jobs, and we are well on our way to hit the 25,000 job benchmark at the end of this year that was established in the Oregon Business Plan. Believe it or not, unemployment is actually lower in Hood River, in Boardman, and Corvallis than in the metropolitan area. And it's useful to ask ourselves why. And the reason is that there are islands of innovation both in urban and rural Oregon that are emerging and taking advantage of Oregon's natural assets and our market advantages in very unique and creative ways. from the biomass energy entrepreneurs at the Port of Morrow that are creating jobs that pay 150% more than local wages, to the cutting-edge homegrown companies that are emerging out of Onami down in Corvallis. An economy of innovation is emerging here in the state of Oregon. And I believe that economy offers us one of our best opportunities for hope for the future because it utilizes our key assets. It is locally driven, and it's built on our strengths. From a solid base in agriculture, in forestry, and in advanced manufacturing, to promising new technologies and research and development, to our strategic location on the Pacific Rim that allows us to access these growing Asian markets. During our recent business mission that we took in September to Japan and Korea and China, I was struck by the strong relationships and feelings of trust throughout those regions that can provide us a bright spot for our economy. Today, nearly 5,000 Oregon companies export their goods and products to the world market. About a quarter of our manufacturing jobs are export dependent, and I saw the innovation of Oregon's economy everywhere I went in Asia. Joining me on that trip was Fred Ziari, who many of you may know from Hermiston, who was introducing his company's irrigation technologies to China and to other Asian companies. This technology is quite remarkable and has the opportunity for a triple win. A win for Fred and his company's expansion objectives, a win for efficiency and water conservation in food processing, and a win for Oregon. A win for our desire to be able to build and export the products and technologies of the 21st century. And I think state government can and must play a role as accelerator and barrier buster for this new economy of innovation. And that role is multifaceted. It includes things like putting together a balanced budget, which we did thanks to the collaboration and leadership of our partners in the legislature, and it was one of the factors that was cited by Standard & Poor's as a key decision point in upgrading Oregon's credit rating from AA to AA+. That budget also has built into it reserves, and although I don't underestimate the difficulties of the upcoming session in February, those reserves will allow us to at least cushion the blow to those in need of essential services during a time of economic uncertainty. Getting the basics right also means following through with infrastructure investments like the Columbia River crossing, while being flexible enough to take into account changing economic surfaces. As you probably know, last Friday we received the record of decision for the CRC from the federal government that will allow us to access federal resources and begin construction planning for that important project that will help our economy and put thousands of people to work in Oregon and Washington. We've also adopted important policies to help reinvigorate our manufacturing sector. Senate Bill 766 facilitates and streamlines the permitting process for industrial lands of regional significance to make sure that this backbone of Oregon's economy continues to thrive while still protecting those other values that are very, very important to Oregonians. Companies like Shimadzu USA, that's building a 54,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Canby, to Oregon Iron Works, that's building the very first energy wave buoy in North America, to Intel and its $3 billion leading-edge wafer fabrication facility in Hillsboro, to Schnitzer Steel, it's long been one of the bedrocks of our manufacturing community. These companies and others are providing exactly the kinds of family-wage jobs we need in providing a very robust economic multiplier effect across the state of Oregon. We have successfully launched Oregon's Natural Career Readiness Certificate, and since January, we have certified over 11,000 Oregonians, and nearly 1,500 of those people have been put to work in the last 6 months alone. And that's a very important step towards ensuring that our workforce has the skills necessary to seize on new opportunities and that their proficiencies are closely aligned with the needs of our business community. Accelerating economic development has been also made possible by regional coordinators that we've appointed throughout the state, engaging local businesses and local communities in establishing priorities for economic development and other community priorities. Local communities, local entrepreneurs, local customers are the heart of Oregon's economy, and I believe they will play a key role and be the foundation of our long-term economic recovery. We have Oregon Regional Solutions teams established in every part of the state with advisors from the local public, private, and philanthropic sectors to help tailor approaches. And with this platform now in place, we should be able to actually accelerate the economic success and opportunities for Oregon entrepreneurs and communities. One early success that you might have noted is the partnership between the state and the federal government and the Port of Coos Bay in obtaining $12.6 million in loans to get the Central Oregon Pacific Rail Line reopened in October after a 4-year shutdown that impacted 700 manufacturers and many communities down on the coast. Now, all those steps are key elements of the Oregon business plan, and we have been aggressively pursuing them with our partners in labor, our partners in the legislature throughout this last year, and we've made some very significant progress on those objectives. But there's still a lot that we have to do. So what I'd like to do is just take a moment and call out 3 other areas that I think are ripe for additional attention. First, for an economy of innovation to flourish in our state, we've got to improve the economic development and business finance tools available to Oregon companies to help them access the capital that they need to grow and expand. While the startup climate in Oregon is probably better than that in some other regions, our per capita investment is much lower than either Washington or California. And that relative lack of investment capital puts us at a significant competitive disadvantage to grow the kind of companies that we need for a vigorous, flourishing economy. So I've been working in order to address this with Treasurer Ted Wheeler to develop what we're calling the Invest Oregon Act that we hope to bring before the legislature in 2012. The proposal will allow the state to strategically leverage its public resources to increase the level of private investment in Oregon and to help unlock the private credit that's now sitting on the sidelines to give those businesses access to the resources that they need. Second, we need to revamp Oregon's tax policy to make sure that it's more rational and equitable, to make sure that it's adequate to seriously invest in education and workforce development, and that it is designed around and to foster our long-term economic development objectives. The perennial question is, how do you actually make that happen? Over the past 2 months, I have been conducting some very fruitful discussions with business and labor leaders to try to rebuild the coalition that's necessary to bring this issue back up to the front of our public agenda, and that work will continue through the upcoming year. Finally, to truly move away from the boom-bust cycle that depletes our natural capital and that makes us very vulnerable to fluctuations in both the global and national economy, we need to continue to develop a sustainable economy that's based on the following 5 goals, which I would like to consider integrating into the ever-evolving Oregon business plan. The first one is to create and retain economic activities and family-wage jobs in our state while actually lowering our carbon footprint and restoring and replenishing our natural environment. A second is to expand our manufacturing sector to reduce the need to import goods and services. Third, to minimize the export of raw materials and to maximize the export of value-added products and advanced manufactured products. Fourth, minimize the need for imported energy. And finally, keep our capital circulating in Oregon through local sourcing and supply chains. And that strategy should initially include at least the following 6 elements. First, to support a scale-up of our energy efficiency retrofits of the built environment. Our Cool Schools initiative has proved to be a very smart investment in both job creation and energy efficiency, with retrofits taking place now all the way from Klamath Falls to Warrenton. But schools is just the tip of the iceberg, because all of our public buildings should have the opportunity and capacity for these energy efficiency retrofits, which can increase energy efficiency and create jobs throughout the state of Oregon. Now, having said that, the financing mechanisms that truly recognize the incredible promise in retrofitting the built environment have been slow to materialize. But last November, our efforts caught the attention of national labor unions like the American Federation of Teachers, which is now committed to giving us up to $15 million additional dollars for this effort. And that is a huge win for Oregon, a huge proof of concept, and Oregon is now a recognized national leader in infrastructure efficiency financing. Secondly, we need to develop a 10-year energy plan, and we are deeply in the process of doing so, to provide a context for the development of renewable energy and also to weigh them and balance them against other values, to reduce the need for imported energy, to maximize energy efficiency opportunities, and to promote distributed generation. We expect the Pacific Northwest to have an additional 4 million people by 2030, an increase of our population by 30%. So it is absolutely imperative that we identify strategies for real efficiency gains, which the Northwest Power and Conservation Council predicts can account for up to 85% of our energy needs over the next generation. Third, we need to support the emerging innovation in our biomass industry as a key strategy for rural economic development. Innovation in forest products is just as important as innovation in the silicon forest. And projects like Wallowa Resources Energy Biomass Campuses will not only create jobs, improve the health of the forests, but also give us a new locally grown renewable energy resource. Fourth, we need to develop strategies to reduce the export of raw logs and raw agricultural products while increasing the use of Oregon agricultural products and Oregon wood here in the state of Oregon. Those strategies could include things as diverse as a more intentional and robust farm-to-school and farm-to-chef connection, to developing an ONAMI-like signature research center focused on innovation in the use of wood. And finally, we need to develop strategies that will identify and replace imports from external suppliers with market-competitive Oregon-made products, thus enhancing Oregon's cluster strategy by connecting our cluster supply chains to Oregon-based firms and innovations. One example of this is naturally advanced technologies, which with seed capital from Oregon's Meriwether Group is unlocking the potential of sustainable biomass resources by turning flax into fibers for business giants like Haynes and Levi. They recently moved from Canada to Lake Oswego. They're busy contracting with farmers in the Lima Valley to grow flax for their superfiber. Another great example is ZChem up in Boardman, which is using technology based, believe it or not, on bacteria found in the stomachs of termites. It's after-lunch technology. And they're turning plant material into biofuel. Their first volume of bio-based jet fuel and diesel fuel will be produced in 2013. And they're also working closely with their partners, Greenwood Resources, to provide up to 15% of their harvest for cellulose material. What is exciting about these new innovative Oregon companies is that they are connecting many sectors, from agriculture to a traded sector, and they're doing so while supplying themselves with other Oregon products. And that, to me, is going to be a key to a sustainable future. Fostering those kinds of interconnections between sectors and with Oregon companies supplying Oregon companies can create a much more resilient fabric for our economy and help insulate us from these fluctuations that have troubled us in the past. So let me just close this afternoon by saying that it's obviously been just about a year since we gathered here together. I'm very, very proud of the progress that we've made together. And I'm also committed to advancing this very good plan that we have in place. But clearly there's still more that we need to do between now and when we meet again next year. And while it won't be easy, I remain extraordinarily optimistic about Oregon's future. I believe that we can weather this economic storm. I think we can do it without losing our sense of community. We can do it without losing our commitment to one another, and we can, in fact, emerge stronger and more united than when we began. Albert Einstein once said that you should not use an old map to explore a new world. And he was right, because every new generation is faced with a new world and a new set of challenges. And these are challenges that can't be met by clinging to the past, but only by imagining a new world and creating a new set of tools with which to build it. We are here today to draw a new map for Oregon, to chart a new course. And I'm confident that together we'll sail boldly and successfully into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor, for your remarks and for your partnership. You know, look, I don't know if it gets much better than to have the governor of your state adopt the Oregon Business Plan as his plan on day one. But that's what's happened. We are fortunate in that respect, and we are partners of his and with the legislature in making sure that the plan gets implemented. So again, well done and thank you.